Morning, everybody. How you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I'm Sean Butler. Bugsy Malone is over there on the field. She'll be behind me shortly. She says hello. So do I. I hope you're all happy and healthy, doing the things you love with the people that you love doing them with. Please do me a favour, guys. If you enjoy the content, then hit the like button for me on the video. It really helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and even if you have, can you double check you still are, because people do get unsubscribed for some reason. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. And guys, it is Friday morning's Tottenham news, views and clues. It's more of a clarification today. There's a little bit of transfer news, but nothing substantial. So I'm just going to probably keep this one brief and run through it. I'm doing a live stream later on where we can talk in more depth about some of the topics I want to get through that aren't really appropriate for this. But let's start with Eric Dyer, shall we? He did complete his deal yesterday to Bayern Munich. The here we go was done. I'm not going to sort of bore you with any more details other than to say that what we thought was initially a £3.5 to £5 million fee or euro fee actually wasn't. It's a loan deal, 6 months, with the option for them to extend to a 3-year contract. That doesn't really affect Tottenham because he only has 6 months left on his deal anyway, so it's more of a player side thing. Depending on how he does, they'll have the option to commit to the rest of the contract. If not, then he will become a free agent at the end of the season. And in terms of Tottenham's fee, as I say, we were thinking somewhere between 3.5 and 5, and it may still be that, but actually, according to reports this morning, it's initially 0 up front, and all of the money any of the money that we will receive from Bayern Munich will be dependent on minutes played, games played, clean sheets, goals scored, performances, appearances in certain competitions, that sort of thing. And so the upper end of that limit is 5 million euros. The expected bandwidth, the expected range is about 2.5 to 3 million if he gets the minutes that are expected of him, which is some but not a lot. So anyway, yeah, that's it. That's the end of the Eric Dyer saga. 9.5 years at Tottenham. A lot of people are glad to see the back of him. I think everybody, or most people, kind of unanimously think he's not right for our system anymore. But other people, some people will have different thoughts on how they're going to remember him. Me personally, I wish him well. And look, I'm a Tottenham fan, and he's been a part of my consciousness for the last 9.5 years. So, I don't share any ill will towards him, and I wish him the best. And hopefully, he gets his contract made permanent, does well at Bayern Munich, lifts some trophies, and lives a long and happy life. Good luck to you, Eric. Appreciate everything, and wish you the best in the future, mate. Moving on to Radu Dragusin. That's all done and dusted as well. There's lots of content on the Tottenham Hotspur official social media pages yesterday showing Radu kind of walking in and meeting Timo Werner during his medical, and his introductory interview saying it's a dream and how happy he is, and he had to sacrifice a lot to get where he's got. So has most successful people, and look, he comes across as very mature, very intelligent, speaks fantastic English, and I'm really excited to see him in the squad. I think one thing I would say, and we were speaking about this on the Irish Hotspur yesterday, and a few news reports have come out this morning kind of confirming the same sort of, mindset as Dave and I and a lot of you lot have spoken about, which is his agent and the frequency of this guy to run his mouth and talk about things, with regard to other clubs since the deal has happened. And apparently it hasn't gone down well at Tottenham Hotspur. They're not particularly impressed with the agent continuing to speak about other clubs and how he's already looking to the future and moving on to other clubs and things like that. I'd be very surprised if that's come from Radu, but I think his agent is just a little bit amateur hour-ish, and probably hasn't got much experience. I don't know the agent, but I'm assuming he hasn't got much experience with the kind of next level of football. I could be entirely wrong. Maybe he's represents a lot of superstars, but for me, I just think it comes across a little bit poor to be talking at the rate he is, and the conversations he's having with so many different media outlets. And I wouldn't be surprised if more respectable top-end agencies like CAA Base, who do have a kind of strong footprint in amongst the Tottenham squad, even though I'm pretty sure that it's against the rules for agents to approach clients that they don't represent. I do think obviously things go on behind the scenes, and maybe there's going to be words in certain players' ears to get into the ear of Radu Dragusin. Maybe not just yet, but in a short period of time, because it's a distraction, a disruption, and it's probably not going to go down too well with the club if this agent is always touting and shopping him around despite having just joined Tottenham. So I'm unimpressed with it. The club apparently are too. I'm sure you are. Let me know. Do you think it's acceptable? And do you see some sort of eventuality where, you know, the player will eventually sign with CAA base in maybe the next 18 months? We shall see. We shall see. Look, I want to talk a little bit about now the kind of transfer news, views and clues. There's only one story out today which I'm going to poo-poo immediately, and that is Wolves midfielder, defensive midfielder João Gomez. He only signed, I think, for Wolves in January of last year, and according to one or two aggregators this morning, Tottenham are looking at him. I don't really see any sense in it. For what it's worth, I don't think the player. I mean, I haven't closely enough, you know, watched his game to have a really strong opinion on him. But you know, what I would say is he's a fairly young Brazilian midfielder for Wolves. He's played well, technically a good player. Defensively, he's very good. You know, gets the tackle stuck in. I think he's in the top. You'll see the stats in a minute, but I'd imagine, I haven't seen them, but I'd imagine that you'll see that he's very good compared to other defenders across the top 5 leagues defensively. But from my memory, I don't think he's particularly great with the ball at his feet, which is surprising for someone who's, you know, comes from that kind of that Brazilian stock. So I haven't been impressed enough, or he hasn't come across my mind enough to think he's the guy that Tottenham need. And in any eventuality, he's only been at Wolves for a year, so I'd be incredibly surprised if there was any truth to it. So I'm not going to give it any more attention, but I just thought I'd bring it to your attention to let you know that that's the latest name. And the other reports are still out there. Conor Gallagher, Adam Wharton, the same people we've spoken about the last 2 days. It looks like Tottenham are going for a midfielder, if anyone else comes in. And that would be interesting. Where I want to kind of spend the next sort of few minutes, guys, is to talk about the impact that Radu Dragusin may have. I did watch a 442 video last night, and it kind of made a really insightful piece about Radu Dragusin's value proposition. And it's not just going to be, according to this guy who did the video, and it makes a lot of sense, if you look at like a Manchester City and the way that sometimes they will play, you know, 3 or 4 centre-backs across the back line to allow for the creativity and the aggressive flair from the midfield and the forward line. And sort of Tottenham don't really have that. At the moment we have, you know, a full strength back line includes Destiny Udogie and Pedro Porro, which are great going forward. And when they come in and play the inversion and come and sit tight and very narrow, then obviously it does, and we've spoken about this ad nauseum on this channel, that there is the kind of, you've got to take the bitter with the better when it comes to the tactics, that you're going to have an overload in midfield and you can play fantastic triangles all the way up the pitch. But if there is a misplaced pass, if there is a transition, a turnover of possession, then the obvious places for the opposition to put the ball is into the space, and the space is naturally on the right channel and on the left channel. Now, we've spoken again on this channel about where's the best place to play Kulusevski. For me personally, I think when we have the ball, he's better in the centre, in that kind of 10 position. And we even spoke last night about maybe kind of repackaging Decky into a midfield 8. When we've got everyone fully fit, is there a space for him when he's not as great with the ball on the right-hand side and Maddison's fit? Then how do you make space for Kulusevski? Well, one of the options could be to repackage him into that kind of midfield 8. The other consideration, though, of course, is, you know, when we don't have the ball, is Brennan Johnson the right guy to have on the right-hand side? You know, he's better than Kulusevski with the ball on the right-hand side. At least he can get forward and he's not afraid to get to the byline and put in the low crosses. And Richarlison has been a benefactor of that, getting, you know, I think 3 of the 5 goals that he scored have come from Brennan Johnson, I think. But when we don't have the ball, when we lose the ball, Pedro Porro is probably the weaker of the 2 fullbacks in terms of getting back, defending. And when he's played very well, Pedro Porro, defensively, it's not in any small part because of the support that he receives from Pape Sarr and Kulusevski defensively. In the absence of Pape Sarr and having Brennan Johnson on the right-hand side, I've always felt that Pedro Porro is a little bit isolated. He doesn't get the support he needs from Brennan Johnson getting back. And whether it's Skippy or Højbjerg or whoever, or Lo Celso playing in that kind of middle eight, it hasn't really felt, I have never felt that comfortable looking at Pedro Porro being isolated with players running at him. Yeah, I've never felt that comfortable watching Pedro Porro be attacked one-on-one. He's getting much better. This is in no way a dig at Pedro Porro at all. I think he's one of the best right-backs in the Premier League. But obviously he still needs support in that process. And this is where I bring it back to the 4-4-2 video, in that Radu Dragusin is a centre-back by nature, but also has played at right-back. Mickey van der Ven is obviously a left-sided centre-back in his sort of nature and his best position, but can also play at left-back. And the point that 4-4-2 makes is just talking specifically about Radu Dragusin, in that in certain games, when you're probably playing against the better teams, maybe teams like Manchester City in the Cup, maybe teams like Arsenal, maybe teams like Liverpool, where you fear that if you do transition the ball, if you don't have the kind of reassurance of a Pape Sarr that's available, or if you don't have a Deki on the right-hand side available to play, then, and if you fear that the obvious option for the defenders or for the opposition is to put the ball into the channels and attack a Pedro Porro or a Destiny Udogie, then having someone like a Dragusin playing at right back, who's been trained more in the art of defending one-on-one, will be able to leave you feeling, more assured that you don't have to double up the defender. You don't necessarily have to bring Romero out to help Pedro Porro against a one-on-one in the situations where he's isolated, which, of course, if you do that, leaves more space for clever and smart wing forwards to bring the ball back inside and attack some space that's then opened up in the middle. And so having the Radu Dragusin option to play on the right-hand side makes a lot of sense in certain specific games. I'm not suggesting that we're going to displace Pedro Porro for a meaningful amount of time, but in certain scenarios, or in certain, not just certain games, but in certain spells, in certain circumstances, in certain games, it might be a good defensive option to be able to have all three of Van der Ven, Romero and Dragusin on the pitch at the same time. If we happen to be defending Leeds in competitions, in FA Cup games, in Europe, in the Premier League, where we're trying to see the game out for the last 15, 20 minutes, bringing all three of them on may be a better aspect, a better asset to utilise to protect ourselves from those vulnerabilities. You could make the same argument for the left-hand side if Tottenham were to have a fourth centre-back. And so this is where I'm kind of going to round off the conversation today, is, we've spoken about whether or not Tottenham now need another centre-back. Are we set with Van der Ven, Romero, Dragusin and Ben Davies, knowing that you've got Ash Phillips, who hopefully will progress to a competent enough player to be ready in the next year, 18 months, knowing that you've got Dorrington knocking at the door as well, and of course behind them you've got 16 or 17-year-old now Luka Vuskovic. A lot of people are asking the question, are we good at centre-back? Are we good in the defensive options for the next 4 or 5 years? Maybe if you just bring in a left-back understudy to Destiny Udogie, who's also homegrown, someone like Anthony Robinson, someone like Rico Henry from Brentford, who can come in and rotate and be a part of a bigger squad, who are very talented, then maybe Tottenham should be okay there for the next 4 or 5 years. Arguably, you could now suggest, given that kind of thought process, that if Mickey van der Ven has the talent to skip out to the left-hand side and play left-back, and the Dragusin has the ability to play right-back but have the natural competence of being centre-back trained, then if Tottenham were to level up and get a fourth centre-back in, who is a natural left-sided centre-back, who is also trained at left-back, someone like a Lloyd Kelly, for example, who is homegrown, then does Tottenham then have all of the recipe, all of the ingredients to be able to do exactly what Manchester City do in certain scenarios, which is to have 4 centre-backs, 4 players that are trained in that position that can cover all 4 positions. And so regardless of injury, regardless of suspension, regardless of situation or circumstance you find yourself in, you have enough capacity, competence and confidence to be able to slot any number of different combinations of players into the back line to be able to handle teams that want to play at you, teams that you want to play at, teams where where you're chasing a lead, where you're trying to establish yourself in a game, or situations where you're trying to protect the lead. And I just wonder whether or not, as I say, shout out to the 4-4-2 video last night, it got me thinking whether or not that's part of the bigger plan here, is to continue to use this inverted fullback scenario when necessary, but also use the versatility of our defenders in different mechanisms, different mannerisms throughout the season in order to maximise the outcomes of games that we face. Just a food for thought, I guess. Listen, guys, I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to point you in the direction of a stream I'll be doing later on today where we're going to be talking about Manchester United and Manchester City. Just for what it's worth, I put out a tweet last night, and I did put out a post on the community page of my YouTube channel asking you guys, what would you rather? To beat Manchester United but lose to City, option A. Option B, to beat City but lose to United, or option C, to draw both and face the replay at the Etihad. And there was lots of votes either way. I think most people said lose to United, beat Manchester City. So the FA Cup is the priority. And that's really what I was looking at, because a lot of the comments were like, I want to win both. And I wanted to kind of say, guys, it wouldn't be much of a poll if I put up win both. You know, I wasn't looking for your optimism, I was looking for your priority. Do you prioritise the FA Cup over 3 points in the league against United? Or do you see us as potential title challengers? And if so, is that the priority? Obviously, I know we've got the ability to win both, but if you had to pick one or the other, that's what I was looking for, just to see whether or not the cup run is more important to you, or whether you think we're good enough at the moment and we have an outside chance of being in and amongst a title run. And if so, then 3 points against United are essential. Let me know your thoughts on that as well in the comments below, guys. Like, subscribe and comment. I'll see you this afternoon. And as always, bye-bye.